As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the window, Emma sat on her living room floor, surrounded by piles of case files. A federal animal rights attorney with a sharp intellect and a heart full of compassion, Emma had dedicated her life to advocating for those without voices. She had always believed that animals deserved the same rights and dignities as humans, and this conviction drove her daily efforts in courtrooms across the country. Emma's greatest joy came in the form of Max, her golden retriever. Adopted during a time of personal upheaval, he had become not just a pet, but a steadfast companion who provided warmth and love when she needed it most. With his goofy antics and unwavering loyalty, Max made even the toughest days feel manageable. Their bond was palpable. They were inseparable. Every morning began with their routine at the local park, Emma tossing a ball while Max raced after it with uncontained joy. It was during one such sunny afternoon that Emma first sensed trouble lurking behind the pristine picket fences of their HOA-governed community. Little did she know that this idyllic life would soon evolve into an unexpected confrontation that would intertwine both her professional expertise and personal devotion in ways she never anticipated. One bright Saturday morning, while strolling with Max at the park, Emma received an unsettling message from her HOA. They accused her of violating community pet policies, specifically claiming that Max exceeded the weight limit set for dogs within their neighborhood. The allegations seemed preposterous to her. Max was a healthy retriever, but certainly not exceeding any logical limits for his breed. Despite this, the HOA summoned her to a meeting, where matters escalated quickly. Frustration bubbled as she arrived at the meeting, surrounded by stern-faced board members armed with documents detailing the supposed infractions. Their voices were icy as they proclaimed that refusal to comply would result in Max's confiscation, a punishment Emma could hardly fathom. She felt an all-consuming dread wash over her. Losing Max felt like losing a piece of herself. As the board laid out their demands, Emma's heart raced. She could hear only snippets of their accusations while images swirled in her mind, moments shared with Max, their morning jogs and evenings cuddled on the couch, all hanging precariously in the balance. Determined to fight back, she realized that not only was it about her beloved dog, but also about standing up for what she believed was right. As the meeting adjourned, Emma left the conference room, her mind racing with a whirlwind of emotion. Anger flared within her. How had the HOA come to this? The accusation felt absurd, as if someone had plucked shiny numbers from thin air, disregarding the reality of a loving companion who brought joy and warmth into her life. Confusion followed closely behind. She struggled to understand how her neighbors could support a system that justified taking her dog away based on arbitrary rules rather than genuinely assessing his character or behavior. Gradually, disappointment mingled with her feelings of anger. Emma felt betrayed not just by the board but by the community that had once seemed welcoming. Determination began to rise like a flame within her. This was not only about Max. It was about standing against what she perceived as an unfair overreach of authority and defending the rights of pet owners everywhere. She couldn't allow ignorance to dictate her relationship with her dog. Her resolve crystallized as she walked back home, plotting her next steps. She would gather evidence to prove the HOA's claims false. In addition, reinforcing the bond with Max during this turbulent time became paramount. Their lives were intertwined, and she would fight tooth and nail to keep it that way. As Emma delved into the HOA regulations, she quickly discovered a patchwork of rules governing pet ownership that seemed designed more for control than for community welfare. The bylaws included vague language regarding weight limits, breed restrictions, and even stipulations about leash length. It was perplexing. What defined a large dog? The lack of clear criteria opened the door to subjective interpretations, allowing the board to enforce arbitrary measures. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA's regulations were not just about maintaining aesthetics, but rather about exerting power over residents. She noted how some clauses appeared to be selectively enforced, often targeting residents who dared to challenge authority or who simply didn't fit the mold of what the board deemed acceptable. This inconsistency fueled her anger. How could a governing body justify removing pets based on vague guidelines, disregarding the emotional bonds and well-being of both animals and their owners? Determined to expose these ambiguities, Emma began compiling evidence, including statements from neighbors who had faced similar issues. She understood that this fight transcended her own situation. It was about pushing back against a system that prioritized rules over compassion and fairness in the community she once cherished. With a renewed sense of purpose, Emma began to channel her legal expertise into understanding her battle against the HOA. She meticulously reviewed the bylaws, leveraging her knowledge of animal welfare laws to identify loopholes and inconsistencies that could serve as a foundation for her argument. Drawing on her experience in the courtroom, she recognized the importance of building a compelling case, not only for her dog, but also for pet owners across their community. Emma crafted a comprehensive outline that detailed her legal rights as a pet owner, referencing statutes that protected animals from undue harm and regulation. She cross-referenced these laws with the HOA's ambiguous policies, highlighting discrepancies that could undermine their claims against Max. Additionally, she sought out case studies of similar disputes, where courts had ruled in favor of pet owners amid ambiguous regulation. Feeling emboldened by her findings, Emma reached out to fellow attorneys and animal rights activists for support and insight. She organized meetings to discuss strategies and gather testimonies from neighbors who had faced similar challenges with the HOA. As she prepared for an inevitable legal fight, Emma was driven not just by the love for Max, but also by a commitment to challenge an unjust system that stifled compassion in favor of control. Emma knew that to effectively challenge the HOA, she needed a solid foundation of evidence. She began her quest by meticulously documenting Max's weight and health records, enlisting the expertise of her veterinarian to certify his breed and size. Each piece of paperwork was carefully indexed, forming a compelling dossier that would counter the HOA's claim. Next, Emma reached out to neighbors who had previously faced conflicts with the HOA regarding their pets. Over coffee in her home or at local cafes, she gathered first-hand accounts of their experiences, stories of pets removed based on ambiguous rules and the emotional distress it caused. These witness statements not only provided context, but also showcased a pattern of selective enforcement that could strengthen her case. In addition to personal testimonies, she scoured legal databases for precedents involving pet ownership disputes in HOA community. Emma compiled a list of relevant cases where courts sided with pet owners against overreaching regulations, emphasizing legal principles about individual rights and community governance. As her evidence collection deepened, she felt empowered, each document reinforcing her conviction. Armed with real stories and legal citations, Emma was not just fighting for Max. She was rallying for every pet owner unfairly affected by draconian rules in her community. As news of Emma's situation spread through the neighborhood, reactions varied significantly among her neighbors. Those who respected Emma's dedication to animal rights rallied around her, drawn by her reputation as a committed advocate for both pets and their owners. They recognized that her fight against the HOA wasn't just about Max, it was a stand against policies that could fundamentally affect all pets in the community. Many of these supporters began sharing their own stories of frustration with the HOA's arbitrary enforcement, prompting group discussions on how they could approach the situation collectively. Conversely, a faction of residents defended the HOA's authority, believing that rules were established to maintain order and property values. They contended that without regulations, the community could descend into chaos, citing cases where neglected pets had caused problems in the past. This division created tensions within the neighborhood as conversations became heated at local gatherings, with some residents accusing Emma of undermining communal harmony. Despite this pushback, Emma remained focused on her objective, fueled by the support from those who stood alongside her. She organized informal meetings in local parks, where supporters and fellow pet owners could devise strategies to challenge the HOA together, fostering a sense of unity and purpose that transcended individual cases. Emma's determination began to inspire others to join her cause, creating a student-like atmosphere of activism and engagement among neighbors. Feeling the weight of the situation, Emma decided to attempt a negotiation with the HOA before escalating to litigation. Drawing on her legal experience, she prepared a proposal that outlined her case, emphasizing Max's good behavior and the emotional bond they shared. Emma reached out to the HOA board requesting a meeting to discuss a resolution that could allow for Max's return without further conflict. During the meeting, Emma presented her findings clearly and respectfully. She highlighted the ambiguities in the HOA regulations and the inconsistencies in their enforcement, suggesting modifications that could benefit both parties. Emma proposed a trial period during which Max could remain in the community under specific conditions, such as regular check-ins with the board and compliance with all leash laws. Initially, some board members seemed receptive, appreciating her calm demeanor and rational arguments. However, others remained entrenched in their position, insisting on strict adherence to rules. As discussion intensified, Emma maintained her composure, reiterating her willingness to find a compromise. Though the meeting ended without an immediate resolution, she left feeling empowered. Emma knew that even small steps toward dialogue could pave the way for future negotiations, maintaining hope that she could protect both Max and the larger community of pet owners. When negotiations with the HOA stalled, Emma felt compelled to take formal legal action to protect Max. Drawing on her experience as a federal animal rights attorney, she meticulously drafted a complaint that outlined the HOA's alleged violations of her rights as a pet owner and highlighted the inconsistencies in their policy. She filed the complaint in the local court, initiating the legal proceedings that would challenge the HOA's authority. Upon receiving notification of the lawsuit, the HOA board reacted with a mix of surprise and defensiveness. Some members expressed outrage over what they perceived as an affront to their governance, while others acknowledged that they had underestimated Emma's resolve. They quickly convened an emergency meeting to strategize their defense, emphasizing their commitment to maintaining community standards. As the local community became aware of the legal proceedings, discussions intensified. Supporters rallied around Emma, seeing her actions as a stand for fairness, while detractors worried about potential repercussions for the HOA's authority and future governance. Emma's supporters began organizing peaceful demonstrations outside HOA meetings, drawing attention to her case and amplifying calls for reform within the community's regulation. With each passing day, Emma felt both anxious and empowered by the unfolding events, knowing she was fighting not just for Max, but for all pet owners in her neighborhood. As the conflict between Emma and the HOA escalated, it became clear that her struggle was a reflection of broader systemic issues impacting residents across the community. Many homeowners began to voice concerns over the HOA's pet policies, which not only seemed overly restrictive, but also appeared to disproportionately target individuals who advocated for animal rights. This environment of fear discouraged many pet owners from speaking out, highlighting a troubling culture where collective interests were prioritized over individual freedom. Residents shared stories of previously silenced grievances regarding arbitrary fines and regulations that felt punitive rather than protective. A growing realization emerged among them: these policies often favored conformity over compassion, stifling genuine engagement and community spirit. Emma's fight became a catalyst for these conversations, prompting discussions about the need for clearer regulations that genuinely reflect community values rather than serving as tools for control. The atmosphere shifted as more residents recognized that advocating for pet rights was also about ensuring fairness in communal governance. Emma's case highlighted the necessity for transparency and accountability within HOAs, inspiring others to examine their own experiences with governance structures that had become rigid and exclusionary. As support grew, so did a collective determination to challenge not only the HOA's actions, but also the very framework that allowed such discrepancies to exist in their community. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Emma stood before the judge, the weight of her fight palpable in the air. Rows of spectators filled the benches, a mix of supporters and HOA representatives, all eager to witness the showdown. Emma could feel the collective energy of her neighbors behind her. Their presence fueled her resolve. Clad in professional attire, she knew this was not just about Max. It was a battle for the rights of every pet owner in the community. As she began her opening statement, Emma's voice was steady yet passionate. She articulated the emotional bond she shared with Max, emphasizing how arbitrary regulations threaten not only their relationship, but also the happiness of countless other families. The opposing counsel countered with cold statistics and rigid interpretations of the HOA's policies, attempting to paint Emma as a reckless resident who disregarded community rules. The back and forth intensified as Emma presented evidence highlighting inconsistencies in the HOA's enforcement practices. With each witness she called forth, neighbors sharing their own struggles against the HOA, she painted a vivid picture of a community stifled by fear and control. Amid objections and counter-arguments, Emma remained unwavering, her heart set on securing justice for Max and advocating for a more compassionate approach to pet ownership within their neighborhood. As the case unfolded, public perception within the community began to shift and evolve dramatically. Initially polarized, residents found themselves increasingly engaged in heated debates about the balance between HOA governance and individual rights as pet owners. Supporters of Emma rallied behind her, seeing her efforts as a courageous stand for fairness and compassion in a rigid system. Social media forums buzzed with enthusiastic discussions, and local gatherings transformed into platforms for sharing stories, advocating for pet rights, and calling for changes to HOA regulation. Conversely, opponents, including some longtime residents, defended the HOA's authority, arguing that rules were necessary to maintain property values and community standards. They feared that loosening regulations might lead to chaos and noise complaints, citing their own experiences with unruly pets in the past. Amid this tumultuous backdrop, a sense of community identity began to emerge. The conflict prompted deeper inquiries into how residents wanted to coexist, whether they prioritized shared governance or individual freedoms. As protests and petitions filled the neighborhood sidewalks, Emma's struggle transcended her personal fight. It ignited a broader movement advocating for transparency, compassion, and reform within the HOA structure, ultimately fostering a renewed sense of camaraderie among those advocating for positive change. The day of the verdict arrived, and the courtroom buzzed with palpable anticipation. Emma stood before the judge, her heart racing as she awaited the decision that would impact not only her life, but the lives of countless pet owners in the community. After deliberation, the judge announced a favorable ruling for Emma, declaring that the HOA's regulations were indeed ambiguous and had been selectively enforced. The court emphasized the importance of compassion and responsibility in community governance, setting a precedent for future cases involving similar issues. As relief washed over her, Emma felt a wave of gratitude toward her supporters who had rallied with her throughout this journey. The verdict prompted immediate changes within the HOA as members scrambled to address the judge's findings on transparency and fairness. They recognized that their previous approach to pet policies required serious reevaluation to prevent future conflict. Emma's victory ignited a renewed momentum in advocacy efforts throughout the community. Residents began working together to draft new bylaws that balanced community standards with individual freedoms, ensuring that regulations would reflect empathy and consideration for all pet owners. As Max bounded into Emma's arms after the ruling, she felt hopeful for a future where companionship was celebrated rather than restricted, solidifying their bond amid the ongoing transformation of their shared neighborhood. In the aftermath of the legal battle, Emma found herself reflecting deeply on her experience and its broader implications. The journey had not only strengthened her resolve as an animal rights advocate, but had also transformed her perspective on community governance. She realized that effective oversight must strike a delicate balance between maintaining order and respecting individual rights, especially when it comes to pet ownership. Emma recognized how crucial it was for residents to engage in ongoing dialogues about regulations that affect their lives. The victory in court highlighted the importance of transparency and empathy within the HOA, prompting her to advocate for more inclusive practices that would allow for resident voices to be heard. This experience made her acutely aware of the responsibilities that come with pet ownership, not just in terms of care, but also as a part of a larger community dynamic. Additionally, Emma felt a renewed sense of duty to educate others about their rights as pet owners. She began organizing workshops and community meetings, empowering fellow residents with knowledge about navigating HOA challenges. Through this process, she not only found strength in her bond with Max, but also cultivated a sense of collective responsibility, inspiring others to advocate for fairness and understanding in their community governance. In conclusion, Emma's journey underscores the vital importance of advocating for animal rights within community frameworks. Her experience demonstrates how individual challenges can catalyze broader movements for change. By standing up against restrictive regulations, she not only fought for her beloved dog Max, but also illuminated the need for compassionate governance that respects the rights of all pet owners. Emma's story serves as a powerful reminder that community involvement is essential in shaping policies that affect our lives. It encourages individuals facing similar challenges to engage in dialogue, educate themselves about their rights, and collaborate with neighbors to promote positive change. As she empowers others through workshops and meetings, Emma inspires a collective responsibility among residents to foster a supportive environment for all pets. Advocacy starts at the grassroots level. Each voice matters in the pursuit of fairness and compassion. By championing transparency and inclusivity, communities can evolve into spaces where both people and pets thrive. Emma's fight exemplifies how passion and perseverance can drive meaningful reform, ultimately ensuring that every pet owner feels supported rather than stifled by rule. In this way, everyone can contribute to a future where companionship is celebrated and protected as a fundamental right within their neighborhood.